Welcome, everyone. I haven't seen you in a while. Other people have been taking my place for the Film Threat Watch parties. I hope you're having a good time on a Friday night. It is Friday. We made it to the weekend. What can you say? Did any of you watch the Oscars? I'm going to guess a lot of you did not. Kind of disappointing. I'm not disappointed with necessarily the films that won, but the show itself. Wow. I don't know. Is there even an Oscar hangover to nurse at this point? No idea what is happening with that award show. But let's put that behind us. Film Threat did an award show you might have heard about called Award This. It's on our YouTube channel. Check it out. You'll discover 90 plus independent features in all categories, from comedy, thriller, horror, sci-fi, really cool stuff, documentaries, pop culture documentaries. So if you were disappointed in the Oscars, watch Award This on the Film Threat YouTube channel. Award This 2021. Look it up. We even filmed our red carpet, a live stream from the bar, and a little digital after party that you could participate in. So I hope you check that out. Today, we are watching a film. That's right. That's what we do at these watch parties. We are watching a film called Clapboard Jungle. Justin McConnell, the director and subject of this documentary, is here today. It's a really fantastic documentary that is, it really just lays out what it is like to be an independent filmmaker and pursue filmmaking as a career. It's very honest. It's also very funny. It's tragic. I think it's required viewing for anyone wishing to pursue making an independent film. Justin shows you warts and all his entire story. Justin McConnell is going to be here today. He is currently in Canada. He's currently waiting in our little digital green room. But I'm happy that you have joined us today for another Film Threat Watch Party. It is my duty to remind you to get the film. Right now, Clapboard Jungle is available on the Arrow Player, if you have the Arrow Player app. It's on iTunes, video on demand, and you might even have the Blu-ray. Because I have no idea, are you watching this live? You might have discovered this watch party. Maybe you're watching it later at some point in the future. Also, another reminder for you, as you're seeking out Clapboard Jungle to watch along with us, post your comments and questions. Post your comments and questions. This is really going to be the ultimate indie filmmaker roundtable. Justin McConnell has a wealth of knowledge. I too have survived making independent films myself. This is why when any filmmaker emails me and they say, I just finished a movie, my first thing I like to say is congratulations. You finished a movie. You're not done once you finish the movie. There's so much more to this process. And what I really love about Justin's film is that it lays out really what the day-to-day is in trying to make a living as a filmmaker. That is, you make movies and get paid to make movies. That is no small feat. Especially with so much dramatic change in Hollywood, with theaters facing challenges. For those of you watching this on Facebook or you've watched the Film Threat podcast, you know that I'm a big fan of the ArcLight Cinemas. We lost the ArcLight Cinemas, 300 movie theaters across the country. One of my favorite movies. I live 3 blocks from the now closed ArcLight Cinema in Pasadena, and the Cinerama Dome now closed, at least temporarily. I hope they find a way to reopen, but they have closed their doors. Tough times, but if you're an independent filmmaker, tough times kind of go with the territory. Post your questions and comments. This is a movie that I cannot wait for you to see. And now I think it's time that we bring Justin McConnell, the director of Clapboard Jungle, on our Film Threat Watch Party. Justin, how you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you? It's great to be here. Well, for you, it's early night, right? It's around 5 p.m. And
yeah,
for me, it's around 8. But I'm good. I'm having a good night. There's a couple other people here with me too. We'll bring out and introduce in a second. Yeah, I'm very happy to be talking. I've been reading Film Threat for years and years and years and years.
Oh,
so it's one of those things where it's like I'm very proud to be on this platform.
Oh, nice. Well, dude, I loved your film. We did a podcast about it, and I think a week or so ago. So check out that podcast. Justin and I had a great conversation. But I before we bring on the other filmmakers that are involved in the project, what inspired you to do this? Because you were already, before you embarked on making Clapboard Jungle, the documentary, which was not the original title. You might want to repeat that story. It's a great story.
Yeah.
You were making films, but you weren't having what you might call success, at least initially, right? So
yeah, I mean, it's a relative term, though, right? Like in terms of financial success, I did make a movie called The Collapsed, which I shot in 2010. That sold to Anchor Bay in a bunch of territories, and Lionsgate picked it up for the UK, and we sold it to broadcast in like 13 territories. And for the tiny bit of money we spent on it, with like how healthy the video stores were then, and I made a tidy profit on that. So like on a financial level, I made a little bit of success with that one project. I just don't think it was a particularly strong movie. Basically what was going on was at the beginning of 2014, my previous documentary, Skull World, had just come out within the last few months. And I was trying to figure out a project that I could do while I was trying to get bigger narrative films off the ground, because I figured it was going to take a decent amount of time to get those together. Development is a long process, or can be a long process. And especially when you're coming from outside of the business and you're not able to walk into a studio anywhere and just like pitch. It's a long process to get people to notice things and get meetings booked and stuff like that. So I was trying to figure out a movie I could do out of my own pocket, just in my spare time, that would allow me to continue working and creating something. And it kind of just hit me that if I'm going to be going out and trying to make these movies anyway, I haven't really seen a documentary that focuses on the indie side of development and financing and like the whole path an indie film takes to get from inception to sales, in a way that it would be like something that I wish existed a decade ago or so, to help guide me in the earlier part of my career, so I make a few less mistakes. And that was like the seed of the idea. So I had no money really, or very little money. It was just whatever extra cash I could make from my post-production business, because that's how I put most of my food on the table. So I had no real money to follow a different filmmaker for 4 or 5 years, or however long it was going to take, because that you have to live their life. So you have to finance yourself shadowing somebody. So I made the decision to turn the camera on myself, because to tell the skeleton of the story, and then also went out and gathered about 120 interviews over a period of 4 or 5 years, so that I can create this sort of overarching look at the film industry in 2 different ways. The movie you're about to watch, if you've got that queued up, and an 8-episode TV series where every episode is a specific topic that we're currently in post-production on. So it's 2 sort of, there's an emotional side, the personal story with practical information, and then there's the educational side, and it just became this bigger thing from a very organic start. So that's kind of how it came together.
Well, I really have to compliment you, because how just honest you were in this documentary. I think it really shows like a lot. There's a lot of rhetoric out there related to indie film or film in general. You should go for your dream.
Yeah.
I feel like you need maybe 5% of the go for your dream, sort of like motivational, whatever you need motivationally speaking, you need about 5%. You need 95% of that you should be filled with knowledge about what the realities of getting involved in the industry are. And I feel like that's what your documentary does so well. We're going to start watching the film in a second. Here we go. So we're getting a lot of great comments already. Here you go. Jenny Ferguson has a comment. She said she's watching with Sam from Oshawa. Chris Burke,
that's my feature film Life Changer. I shouldn't. Anyway, Sam is Jenny's husband, and Sam is one of the leads in Life Changer, a movie I made a few years ago. So I know Jenny decently well. Hello, Jenny. How are you? Tell Sam I say hi.
We're going to start the movie in just a few minutes, like about 5-6 minutes. We're going to start the film. So get prepared, get the movie queued up, however you're going to see it, and then we will comment along. Let's bring on the rest of your team here.
Sure.
Kevin Burke and Daryl. I didn't get Daryl's last name.
Daryl Shaw.
Daryl Shaw.
You can edit your info at the bottom, Daryl, if you want. So Daryl Shaw is my co-producer on the film. I brought him in pretty much right from the start because I figured if I'm going to make a movie where I'm turning the camera on myself, I really have to avoid getting too close to the material, which is obvious when you when you make a movie about yourself, or at least following your own journey. So Daryl was there from the very beginning to call me on my bullshit because he's. I mean, you could speak for this. He's somebody in my life who will just tell me like it is and send me paragraphs of feedback. Let's put it that way. How are you doing, Daryl? I think he's frozen. That's pretty funny.
Daryl might be frozen. If Daryl's watching this, the best way, I mean, we do have like, StreamYard is not a perfect technology.
He's unmuted.
The best way to fix it is to come back.
There he is. He's back.
There you go. All right.
And hey, Daryl. Okay, maybe log in and log back out.
yeah, give that a try.
Yeah,
Kevin Burke. I'm gonna mute you.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Kevin Burke is the editor that we brought onto the project in post-production and an associate producer on the movie. And Kevin is a director himself and made a really good documentary called 24 by 36, a movie about movie posters. And that I found to be really well structured and very well edited. And he was somebody who I wanted to work with. And Kevin, glad that you were on board.
And I've also seen Kevin, I saw your documentary. We did a podcast that's going to be running in a few weeks. Nice. And I love your film. So.
Oh yeah, thanks, man. And thank you, Justin. It's been such a pleasure to be a part of Clapboard Jungle and this whole movie. Sometimes I feel like I know Justin more than he thinks I do, just based on all of the abundance of footage that we sifted through over a couple of years of editing this project. But it's really been a pleasure. I'm happy to be here.
Ira's saying, have you tried turning it off and on again, Daryl? Yeah, definitely. Kevin was somebody who I needed a second set of eyes on the footage that would distance me from all the stuff I shot and all the life that I lived. And he was the one who went through with basic guidance and put together the initial assembly and helped cut it all down to what the film it is. And without these two people helping with the hey Kyle, without these two people helping with the edit and putting the film together, I don't think it would be the movie it is right now. That's up to you to decide what that means when you actually watch it. But and I'm hoping you're not watching it for the first time with this commentary, because it'll be frustrating to not be able to hear the actual film.
But I think it'll be useful too. Because there's so much in there you can talk about what you were going through during certain parts of the doc. So
yeah, I suppose.
Are we getting ready? Do you guys all have like the film? I have it on an iPad right here.
There's Daryl. He's moving.
There he is. Okay.
Using a dot matrix webcam.
Hopefully that'll work. Great, but it's the time where we should be pressing play.
Sure.
Does everyone have it kind of off to the side or something that you can kind of?
I've got it set here on the second screen.
Cool.
We could just do a 1, 2, 3 countdown for everybody.
I think yeah, you should probably do the countdown and then we'll.
I think Daryl's playing Overwatch.
3, 2, 1.
I'm just kidding.
I'll just play mine because
some of these comments are fucking hilarious. Okay. yeah, just go ahead and play Zombie Army 4 while we're doing this. It'll be a good time. Okay, I'm ready to count down whenever you all are. Let me know.
Go for it.
Okay, ready? Okay, and for all you at home, like merch, you know what you're doing. 1, 2, 3, go. All right, it's playing. And you can leave thing. Okay. Oh yeah, it's got different logos in different places of the world, so the timing isn't going to be exact depending on where you're watching it from.
It might be off by a few seconds.
Yeah, totally.
That's not bad. It is hilarious how many opening logos are on movies these days. It's just
it's
the finance companies.
Yeah, that's why you see a million executive producers on a lot of independent films too, is because you've gotten all the financing together like a big puzzle. So you've gotten 10% here and 5% here and 10% here, and maybe this is a post sponsorship. And there's even on this movie that costs very, very little money. There's 6 logos or something like that.
It's all Unstable Ground. That's your company.
Yeah, that's my company. And 79 and Broadway before that was Andrew Vandenhouten's company, who's a very prolific producer and a very good distributor.
And here's Guillermo Del Toro, who's who you got to talk to.
Yeah, I was hired by Arrow Video to shoot a interview between Guillermo Del Toro and George Romero, and on the day that we shot that at George Romero's place, we arranged after we finished that 1 hour long interview that you can watch on the Arrow player right now. Del Toro basically agreed to sit for an additional 15 minutes for this doc. So wow. It was just like convenience, and it just happened to line up that way. And I'd already shot Romero's longer interview, maybe 6 or 7 months before that. So it was luck. And Chris Alexander had a lot to do with that. So if he's watching or if he sees this, thank you, Chris. He helped us get a lot of okay, the timing on that rip isn't a great comment, Merch, because I'm talking about Chris Alexander right now. He's still alive. but anyway, yeah. So I guess the question I would have for Kevin right now and Daryl is, for this opening segment, do you remember how it was in the assembly? Like, because this has been sort of like tightened down and reworked a lot compared to, there were longer little stretches of clips from my early stuff in this part establishing me, and it was less like a montage in the early edits. Kevin, what was the mindset for building this opening section?
I just think it's such a great way to introduce a filmmaker. I mean, you're like, again, I've said this before. I've told Justin, privately, and I've also, embarrassed him by patting him on the back about it in interviews and stuff. But one of the most organized directors I've ever worked with in terms of being able to provide a library of footage to pull from. I mean, the fact that you had all of this old footage from, films that you had made decades ago was just a dream come true to be able to kind of edit together. And that's part of why it was so long in our assembly, is I just didn't want to let it go. Like, it's such a great part of the journey to be able to show those formative years as a filmmaker and the things that came out of them. Even to the point where you have that little bit in like early high school.
Oh yeah.
Or late grade school, where you're actually talking to the other students in a video about, how to make films. Like, I just find that so endearing. And
that's one word for it.
I love it, man.
Yeah,
I mean, maybe I have a personal nostalgic kind of attachment to it because I used to do the same stuff as a kid. But I really think that stuff is really important to, the story of who a filmmaker is and the journey that they want to take.
Cool. Daryl, do you remember the initial pitch video we did for Indiegogo? And there was a different 1 minute version of this sort of opening. Do you recall that at all? Are you frozen again? Anyway, all right. So
honestly, not really. Yeah,
okay.
I don't know which timeline Daryl you're talking to now, but
what? Anyway. So yeah, this opening section, what I wanted to do was
I don't remember. Okay.
No, you can finish talking. You don't have to. This is already going great. So this opening
section, I'm on a really bad delay. I don't know why, but I'm like a couple seconds after you guys, obviously. So that's why I'm cutting out, because you start talking when I stop talking.
Okay, so we'll wait for you to have
I remember shooting it. I don't remember the particulars of the original edit or pitch.
Cool. So this opening little bit, I wanted to get sort of establish who I was and where I'm coming from in terms of the perspective of the film business. Establish that I'm not really anybody, and try and set the scene for where the business is on an independent perspective. using talking heads. So the first 10 minutes is kind of just the hook to get you into the movie and get you established to where things are, and then from that point forward we sort of branch out in a more chronological kind of way where it starts actually moving in a, starting at a certain date and then following the progress over a period of 4 years or however so long it was. But I knew I didn't want this to go so long at the beginning that people would be tuning out. So it had to be like tight and snappy, and we had to see the first block of interview subjects before the 10-minute point. It was kind of the goal, because people, after 10 minutes, people tune out. They stop watching if they're not already hooked in some way, shape, or form. So it's kind of important to grab people as early as possible, even with something like this.
By the way, I miss your long hair.
Oh, well.
Even though I never knew you back then.
I don't. I mean, the amount of shampoo that would take to keep from looking like doll hair would be was just a little bit much, and it's pretty warm. It gets real sweaty. But I could circular headbang when I had long hair when I was in my metal band in the mid 2000s. So I guess I miss it for that side of things. But it is what it is. That's Skull World, the previous documentary I made, which you can also watch in the Arrow Player right now. My Sisyphusian attempt to try and get this larger movie, The Eternal, made that didn't really pan out the way that I was hoping. We got halfway to about $3 million twice before the recession hit and took all the wind out of the investor sales, which is basically being described in the movie right now. But it was challenging. No more hair metal. It wasn't hair metal, man. So I don't know what else to say about this part necessarily. Is there any questions from the audience of people watching, no matter how stupid or how much you want to troll? Anybody?
No, only stupid questions.
Yeah,
only
I'm totally into
questions.
stupid questions.
No, there are no stupid questions.
Oh, well, there's definitely stupid answers. Okay, there's a Mike Merriman question.
Yes, this is exactly right. That is the exact reason.
Okay.
Mike, in answer to your question, Fantastic Four, there's 4 people here, and they're all fantastic. Did
you really plan that ahead, or was that?
I did not.
Yeah, and now do we all have to argue over who gets to be Ben Grimm?
Yeah. No, I don't know. I generally wear a Film Thread shirt, but I thought, I don't know, I'm in a FF mood.
I really like the Ending the Eternal pitch video.
You mean I spent just under $1,000 and fuck you, merch. I spent just under $1,000 and I know this guy and he will troll the hell out of me because he's one of my best friends. I spent just under $1,000 and I figured out how to convince the Toronto Transit Commission, the TTC, to let me rent Lower Bay Station in Toronto, which is a station below a subway station where they hold it aside for filming. Part of Max Payne was shot there. Part of my movie The Collapsed was shot there. There's been a bunch of stuff that was shot there. I can't remember. I think part of Underworld or one of the Underworlds. So I rented it for the day for relatively cheap, and we just got some effects people and some people to play bodies, and we just shot this sort of like teaser thing to help shop this movie around. In addition to a comic book that we put together that Justin Erickson illustrated. We had a first issue of, and then another 11 issues scripted out. We were sort of shopping The Eternal as this big package with attached talent, and it definitely made people interested, and that was it was a relatively successful approach. But I would say that if I actually got that movie made back then in 2009 to 2010, and I had a $3 million budget to play with, I probably would have fucked it up. Because I was too green. I think that's entirely possible.
Yeah, you know what? That's interesting. I have a question from you.
Okay.
I'm not from the audience. I've worked on this film.
Mm-hmm.
I know you know that. I'm just messing around. But my question is, I guess, what's the comfort level like when you change? Does it still get to a point like you've kind of ratcheted up in terms of the budgets you've worked with and everything like that as a filmmaker? Does it still get to the point where things make you nervous? Like it's like, okay, your next film, they might throw a bunch of money at you that you've never worked with before. Is that something that's ever on your mind? Like, okay, now I'm kind of up here and things are getting a little bit more stressful.
I think it's not necessarily about the budget at this point, to my mind. It's more about understanding what to do with a bigger crew. Because in my early stuff that I was making, it was a very skeleton crew kind of thing. And I was wearing more hats on set than I would in a larger budget movie, where I have to rely on a bunch of department heads and communication between a bigger pool of people. And in order to make that communication result in a good film and like have good morale on set and have everybody sort of working toward the right goal, that sort of thing is something that I think I have more experience with now than I did a decade ago or earlier than that, or even 5 years ago before I made Life Changer. That ability to kind of work with more people is the thing that I'm more comfortable with now than I was back then, and just trying to be more of a team player. So I don't think I'm not necessarily worried about, oh no, this budget's going to be too much for me to handle, because whether it's a $10 million movie or like a $200,000 movie, it's similar mechanics. It's just, to me at least, I'm now more comfortable with the idea of having a team to work with, as opposed to a skeleton crew with me like doing every job I possibly can to save money. They're two different kind of dynamics of filmmaking, I think.
Gotcha.
We just saw the great James Lorenz, actor
Yes.
James Lorenz, who was in Frankenhooker, a Frank Henenlotter classic, and also I don't know. I'm a big James Lorenz fan.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
He's great. Daryl is trying to make a comeback.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on there.
I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, James Lorenz is awesome. He had barely been acting when I had him agree to do The Eternal back then. I found him. I think he was selling cars or something in New Jersey, and I tracked him down somehow through that. But since then, he's been in a number of TV roles, and I honestly think he should have a bigger career at this point. I think he's a really talented actor, and he's always been in these like memorable smaller roles and things like RoboCop 3 and King of New York and Street Trash, and always kind of owns the screen every time he's on it. And I had this sort of like, not dream, but I guess in the early 2000s, I thought, wouldn't it be cool to make a movie with all the three Henenlotter leads together in the same movie? I had that in my head for a while. So I was trying to fill out James's role would have been a bigger one, one of the leads actually, but I was trying to fill out like all three of those guys somewhere in the movie at the time we were doing the casting, but
and James Lorenz was also, I don't know if you know the project that he developed for years called Softy.
Oh yeah, Mr. Softy, I think.
Mr. Softy, yeah.
Yeah.
I wrote a book years ago called The 50 Greatest Movies Never Made, and included a chapter about that project, which is basically, it's like a mobster movie, but a guy who is an ice cream cone.
Mm-hmm.
It's the weirdest. It's so weird. There's footage of it that exists online.
No, the whole short is online in pretty good quality now. You can find it on YouTube. It's pretty great.
Look up Softy James Lorenz. It's fantastic.
Yeah, that's a really, really. Hey, it's me. I'm trapped in the chat room. Now Daryl's in the chat room. I don't know how he ended up there.
Maybe, Daryl. Maybe you can just chat along.
Yeah, maybe.
If your internet blows, what can
Daryl's a director too, by the way. Android, his logo there, Android reenactment, is actually a really fun kind of reanimator styled sci-fi horror movie that he made a while back. That's actually pretty charming and fun, and low budget, but absolutely worth checking out. You can probably watch it on Vimeo on demand and a bunch of places right now. I think I saw a question.
There's a couple of questions. I'll post them up, but here Jenny Ferguson has a question.
Sure. Most challenging and rewarding part of making this film. I'm going to let Kevin talk first, because I've been rambling on for a bit.
The most challenging part is also kind of part of what I mentioned earlier, is Justin being so well organized that he keeps everything. There's so much footage. What did we have, Justin?
About 300 hours, 320 hours, something.
300 hours of footage to go through to pare this film down into a narrative, and it was fascinating to watch and to go through it. Like, as we were editing, it really makes you kind of feel like you're very much part of the story when you're kind of finding these pieces and stuff. Like there are moments where like I was editing it and I'm going through things chronologically and I'm rooting for Justin, like for some good news, because I've just looked through, 4 or 5 clips of bad phone calls that I just had to go through. And I'm sitting there going, oh shit, come on, give him some good news. Give him some good news. So it was, that was, I would say, both the most rewarding part and the most challenging part on my end.
Yeah, that makes sense. For me, it was just finishing it. It was waking up day to day and actually continuing to record things and there are gaps in the story because for a few months would go by where I was just too busy with a million other things, or I just didn't feel like recording myself for a period of time, and then I would pick up again. And just because it was up until post-production, every penny was coming from my own pocket. So it was very much like the struggle of going, is anybody even going to want to watch this? Is there any point in making this? Ultimately, I'm very happy that we got it done and it's out there, and so many good distribution companies picked it up and it's been so well received. But like to get the proverbial football into the end zone and like just keep going and then hoping you have an ending and hoping the movie doesn't end with me failing and not getting any of the movies made, and because that would have been still an honest documentary but a bummer of a documentary. Spoilers for the end if you haven't seen it, I guess. But that was really it. It was just trying to continue to push this thing forward until I had enough footage that I felt we were able to make the movie and the TV series. And there's still a few interviews I'm trying to collect over the next few months to help boost up some of the personalities in the TV series, and especially with an eye toward better representation, because I actively tried to get a good spectrum of voices from different walks of life, and to a degree I succeeded, but not to the extent I was hoping. So that's what I'm trying to correct, at least for the television series itself. I think I saw another question. I think I know the best place to sit in each theater in Toronto. Okay. Oh, what did you look for in choosing people to interview? Okay. A lot of it was just access. Who I had access to because I was going to a specific market, or I was going to LA, or I was going wherever else. Like, who could I get on a specific trip? Or that was like the first stage was just like, okay, who can I actually get? And then the next stage was for people that I knew I could get, but were up and coming filmmakers who would have something interesting to say or an interesting perspective. But really, it was sort of an organic process. If I thought somebody had something interesting to say or something to add to the conversation, I would go out to them. And there are people in the TV series version, like I interviewed an entertainment lawyer, and I interviewed a rep at Indiegogo or a rep at Vimeo OTT. And these people aren't in the feature film, but they're they're going to be in the TV series, because I needed those different varying perspectives. And it's just, we didn't really talk about crowdfunding. We didn't talk about self-release and entertainment law in this movie. So I have those interviews. It's just, implementing them in the right place kind of thing. So there's like maybe 25 people that aren't even in the movie that were interviewed that will show up in the series. So
there's a TV version of this.
Well, it's a different format. It's 8 episodes. Every episode's a specific topic to do with the film industry or the film business. And it's sort of like a film school in a box over 8 30 to 40 minute episodes. Kevin's working on the assemblies of a lot of that right now, and I'm working on taking those assemblies and hashing them into episodes kind of thing.
And where is the best place to sit in a movie theater?
For me or for everybody? I like dead center, maybe 1/3 up to 3/8 up in the middle of the surround field, ideally, simply because I like the proper balance of the surround mix. I don't want to be so close that I have to search the screen to see everything. So that gives you you can see the whole screen with one view, and you're in the right place for the sound field, for the surround mix to hit you properly.
Did you ever spend any time in the Humber cinema?
I did. Yeah. That's a weird one because it's got a split right down the middle. So you can't sit in the middle because that's the unless you're sitting in the fire exit, you can't actually sit in that seat.
But you get there real early. You can get those two seats that look right down the aisle in between the other two. But that used to be a great theater. It's a shame they closed recently.
Yeah. It was. I've seen some fun movies there for sure. So I think where we're at in the story now is we're writing the initial drafts of the screenplay of Mark of Cain, which is based on the book we optioned, and because we got into the Frontiers Market, which is a Fantasia runs annually twice in two different places. They run a co-production market that they handpick and select certain projects, and then you get to go pitch them to groups and groups and groups of people. It's going to show up in the movie in a minute. Groups of people from all different companies and agencies and studios and stuff like that. It's a kind of a grassroots way to get films going and to network with people. So we got into that at one place. What do you mean it depends on the movie, Daryl? Which movies are better to sit closer or further? No, Humber Cinema, not a Hummer in a cinema. Mike Merritt. It was a good theater. I can't remember the last movie I saw there.
This shout out to the people in the chat. You guys are funny, man.
I love how that's on. So every question ends up on the screen, right? So you can literally write anything.
Not every question. I'm filtering. I only put my Berman on when he's funny, and lately,
yeah, he's pretty funny.
He's not been very funny.
But if you write something, then we point an arrow upward to the person's video thing above it. You could basically make them look like they're saying anything.
I don't know.
What's in that tall can, Kevin?
This is, I'm in Quebec, so I assume you guys have this in Ontario.
Oh, you mean good beer? No, we live in
Hickson IPA.
We don't have good beer base.
This is a good beer, man.
We got to go to like Bevmo.
That was just Steve Kostansky on the screen there. He's the director of Psycho Gorman, and an extremely talented up and coming director who I respect a lot, and he's a super nice dude. So and super talented effects artist,
and a great children's film. He makes great films for children. I mean, it's Psycho Gorman is a. I can't.
Well, yeah, I suppose.
And Manborg.
Oh my God!
Yeah, Manborg's pretty
so good.
Yeah, pretty amusing. He basically made over a period of like several years in a basement or a garage, just sort of like building everything and shooting it all on green screen piece by piece. A good point about sitting further back to read subtitles, Daryl.
That makes sense. All right, yeah, NorCal has good beer. I mean, look, you can find a good brewery that's got good beer. You have to search around. But the thing is this, if you just go to a normal liquor store in Canada, you can find good beer. I used to go to Canada when the drinking age was 19. I used to go to Canada to get beer.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie, we've got pretty great beer up here.
We've got bad beer.
I don't know that that's disputable.
I think there's a lot of bad beer in the craft scene, but I don't know. People have to try something. It's like jazz, right? They try different flavors, and a lot of them are terrible.
Yeah.
I don't know how to phrase. It is PG for short. You're right, Steve. A Father's Day mention in the chat too. Well, that's fun. So a lot of the way this movie is structured, the way it's structured this way, like the way it was put together, was that the personal story was meant to be like a skeleton or an arc or a case study of one particular career in film, and then each sort of event in that career over that period of time would be a way to package a specific topic that we can then put a group of talking head interviews to support that topic. And there was a review in Austin Chronicle, I believe. I think it was Austin Chronicle. And I really like the way that they described it, because this is kind of what we did. I'm sort of like Goofy in those old cartoons where it's like Goofy tries to play baseball and then he messes up. And then they're like, no, Goofy, you do it this way. And I think a lot of the structure of this is that. It's me making mistakes and learning as I go. And then the interviews come in to tell me either what I did right or what I did wrong. And I'm not 100% sure between me and Kevin how that, which one of us actually put that structure together. I think it might have been gradually we got there through an organic process of just revisions and back and forth. But that initial assembly you did already had that sort of to a degree. And I know we rejigged things. Like I think there was 2 different short film sections because we dealt with 2 different short films at one point, and then that was all condensed into one.
There was some. I mean, I remember pushing pretty hard to include, like, we were trying to balance, the talking head stuff and the personal stuff. And as I mentioned before, I'm like a huge sucker for the personal side of the story and Justin's journey. So I distinctly remember pushing really hard on, like, I want to include everything that involves you, like every short, you know what I mean? Like every short film that was done, all these other things. And we just over time, we went over revisions, kind of hashed things out, removed some things that were redundant. And, admittedly, it ended up in a much better place, I think, than
to get rid of the repetitive nature. Like, you wouldn't want to necessarily revisit something you've already done when you can put it all into one section and then move on, kind of thing.
Well, it was tough to balance, right? Because it's like one of the things that was really difficult because this film spanned so many years is, you start putting together the narrative and you get to a section where you think, okay, here's the short film section. But Justin has made 4 short films over
that period,
over that period of time. So it's like if we condense them all together, they don't make chronological sense necessarily, unless you're using the talking head footage where people are specifically, referencing short films and the path that you take through them to kind of bolster your reputation as a filmmaker. So it was that was pretty challenging actually for us to kind of figure out what is the best way to piece this puzzle together since it was such a long span of time.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, it was like things like we had a section on this smaller short damn selfie that I shot in a day for like $500 for fun. And it didn't make sense for us to reference all the talking heads to be like, you got to make a calling card short, when really I was just making a joke short for the shits and giggles. But later on we were making Do You See What I See, where actual decent money was put into it, and it was meant to be more of a calling card. So it just made more sense to put that discussion with Do You See What I See, because then we can follow up on with the film festival section too. So it all kind of flows into something that's not necessarily repetitive. I see a question about favorite Canadian horror film. Thanks, Steve.
I got that too.
Tell your mom I appreciate that. Favorite Canadian horror film is a really tough one for me, and I say this as somebody who's actually directing. After I'm done with this directing, They Came From Within, an adaptation of Caleb Vatsal's book on Canadian horror history. I mean, I love Black Christmas. I love My Bloody Valentine. I consider Cube to be a horror film. I love that as well. But there's like super weird, obscure shit too that there's a lot of Canadian horror out there, and I honestly, I'd be here so long naming my favorite stuff. I really, really like Scanners and the majority of the early Cronenberg stuff. And there's lots of modern stuff too that I'm really I really appreciate too. I mean, Psycho Goreman's so much fun, and that fits in the horror genre. I don't know. This is a big question. What do you think, Kevin?
I have to go with Black Christmas. I just have to.
Yeah.
Like it was such an important part in my personal education in Canadian horror history that I just, it's such an unforgettable, important movie to me that it makes it a little bit easier of a decision for me. Although, like everything that Cronenberg has made is, especially in the early years, has been phenomenal. But that movie just really, really stands out to me.
Oh, and Ginger Snaps is great. I even like the cheapy Cube sequels, especially. Sorry, not Cube sequels. Scanner sequels, especially Scanners 2 that take the New Order. Is it the New Order that Scanners 2? I like that one a lot. It's like they turn Scanners into a goofy action movie, and it's just so much fun. Screamers, I would consider, even though it's a sci-fi film, I consider the '90s Screamers to be like a hell of a fun Canadian horror flick, because I mean they're little burrowing metallic razor creatures that, robots that cut your legs off and stuff. If that's not horror, I don't know what is. Scanners 2 is underrated. You're right, J.D. Smith.
And so is Mike Merriman. I see that.
Yeah.
pop up about Black Christmas predating Halloween.
Scanner Cops. Yeah, yes. There's Scanner Cop, and then there's Scanners the Showdown. Which is Scanner Cop 2. Good effects. I don't think Scanner Cop 2 is that as good as Scanner Cop 1, but that might be the Richard Lynch factor. Anyway, we've gone on a tangent, which I'm cool with. I think we're on our way to Frontiers in the movie right now. Yeah, I'm not going to say any of my own stuff because that would be stupid, but I've made some Canadian horror flicks too. Yeah, there's a billion of them. There's hundreds of them, especially from the tax shelter era. There were so many made, and there's some interesting stuff there. Siege is coming to Blu-ray next month, finally, after years and years and years. A nice East Coast Assault on Precinct 13 styled film, but still I think vaguely fits in the horror genre. Well, Steve, you're in Life Changer. You can't necessarily say that. Like you're a little biased. The one RoboCop was in Trancers? No, Screamers is the one that Peter Weller was in. I was the one I was just talking about the killer robots. That was shot in Quebec. Roy Dupuis in that too.
We just saw Steph Trepang.
Yep.
Shout out to her, man. Like what a, speaking of people in Canadian cinema, what a talent that's really kind of helped move so many indie films forward.
Mm-hmm. Well, she's the original. She's the person who founded Frontiers at Fantasia. Lindsay took it over from there, and now Anik runs it. But she's the person who poured that foundation, and for the first few years of Frontiers was in charge of that market. And there's a lot of films that exist now. I mean, they exist because the creators of the films came up with the content and actually put together the packages and pitched them. But without that Frontiers platform, there's a lot of films that wouldn't exist right now, like Raw and Color Out of Space and The Void and stuff like that. All that stuff came out of Frontiers, and with the help of Stephanie, and actually, I keep looking at the comments. Rabbit and Shivers are both awesome. Yeah, they're great. And Trancers is not Canadian, but it's definitely worth watching. It's not quite Doll Man, but it's definitely worth watching.
Doll Man reference.
Yeah. The original, not Doll Man versus Demonic Toys, which isn't as good.
Right. I'm a big Full Moon fan, so.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They've definitely got. There's an era of Full Moon and Empire Pictures where they made consistently entertaining stuff. But yeah. Thank you.
Wow, that's a big compliment.
But again, and I appreciate it, but she's also connected to Life Changer too, to some degree. But I really appreciate that compliment. I remember talking to Jenny on set and stuff like that, and yeah, she's a very intelligent woman. Yeah, Empire and Full Moon were definitely great in that zone in that era. And when Charlie Band was producing stuff like Reanimator and Robot Jocks and all that stuff.
I just got the Full Moon app. There's a Full Moon
because there's a streaming service. They've got Full Moon.
Yeah. So good. It's so good.
Well, even like Seed People and the weird. There's so many weird little horror flicks that were made that they didn't have a ton of money, but they sure had a lot of ideas, and some of them were better than others.
And they break it up like they've got like a whole thing of like Italian exploitation movies. Mm-hmm. Just like just over the top, insane stuff.
Turbo Kid, yeah, that's a good call. That's a good genre flick made here. Oh yeah, Puppet Master 3 was awesome. That's the one that's in Nazi Germany that has 6-shooter in it. That's a really fun movie.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Turbo Kid came from Frontiers. Yes, you're right, Daryl. Absolutely.
Yeah, that was one of their first. Wasn't Turbo Kid one of their first?
I think it was in the first market or the second market. I'm pretty sure it was quite early on. And yeah, and there's us pitching Mark of Cain too. That's James from Raven Banner. Well, I don't know if you're dead on with the sync right now, but the guy sitting across from us is James Flair from Raven Banner, who I've been working with for 11 years now, I think, because they picked up The Collapsed and Skull World like in 2010. I think that was film 7 and 8 that they signed out of their company, and now they're on film like 100 something. So they've grown a lot over the last decade.
I just want to mention that Abby always looks so cool on film too. Like he looks like He looks like the way that somebody would script a producer to appear on film. Abby always looks like that. He's always got a cell phone in his hand. He's,
Isn't it the opposite? Isn't Crash and Burn the spiritual sequel to Robot Jocks? I always thought Crash and Burn came after Robot Jocks.
What I like in the film is you actually show the sort of the looks. I mean, now you do pitch decks, right?
Yep.
You do the pitch deck, but this you have like this binder where you're trying to show like this is what this gives you a sense of what you're trying to do with the film.
Yeah, I have that for both the slate and for individual projects, so that if I'm sitting down to take a meeting, it's very easy to visually show somebody what the pitch is, as opposed to like trying to describe it, and maybe you're like running between meetings, and it at least lets people absorb something with their eyes and take in the scope of a project in a much more, because people learn. There's three different ways people learn, right? There's kinesthetic, which is learned by doing. There's visual, which is learned by looking, and then there's auditory, which is learned by conversation. So if you're pitching something and you've got a visual learner and you're just talking at them, they're not going to absorb as much as if you're talking at them and you have a visual representation. And in terms of kinesthetic, I haven't been able to figure out how to work that into a pitch yet, because people like to be pitched to, not pitched with. So, but at least you can cover the two, the visual and the auditory, by having both.
I've heard crazy stories of directors in Hollywood spending upwards of $100,000 to pitch a movie to a studio like Marvel. Like, here's my pitch is I've basically shown you pieces of the film.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy. It's gotten a little out of hand. If you
proof of concepts, definitely people can spend a lot of money on them, but when they work, right? Like Fede Alvarez made what was it called? Something Panic Zone. It was like a 5-minute killer giant robot short. And that got him the Evil Dead remake. He made a 5-minute directing and effects piece. It was called something Panic. Anyway, these proof of concepts do actually work. They can work. I think if you go too overboard, it's a big gamble. So, you got to be prepared to lose all that money if it doesn't go. Something like Lights Out, it's a 1-minute short film that got David Sandberg a massive career. That kind of thing works. I still remember, was it Shoot 'Em Up, the movie with Clive Owen? The pitch for that was just like an animatic of hand drawings sort of cut together into a trailer, and that was enough 20 years ago to do it. But now, obviously, you'd want something more visual than that. But it worked. It got him that movie. So,
and then famously, the Deadpool, they basically did the opening scene. Mm-hmm. And then it was leaked because the project was canceled, and it's rumored that Ryan Reynolds is the one who actually leaked it.
I don't doubt that, or I mean I can fully believe that. That's entirely possible. Billy Blanks is a wise martial arts school janitor. That's a movie I can't place. I've seen it. It's not King of the Kickboxers. It's not TC 2000. Yeah, I'm not sure what movie that is. No, Fede Alvarez did Don't Breathe and the Evil Dead remake. One of the Dead was Alejandro Brugia. I forgot his last name. I apologize. Showdown. Okay, good to know. Oh wait, Showdown. That's on Prime. That's actually been on my Prime list for a while. I will watch that. Thanks.
Unbelievable how much good stuff is on Prime. Like old, there's like a ton of B movies from the 50s that I've forgotten.
Well, I think that's because anybody can put a movie up on Prime, technically. You're only making 1 cent per hour streaming, but anybody can do it. So a distributor has an old catalog of stuff. They just shoot it at there like a shotgun because they figure one or two of them catch, they'll make a bit of money. But as a pool of content, they'll make even more because it's just about getting whatever revenue they can out of that catalog. If it sits dormant, if it's better on Tubi, it's better on Midnight Pulp or on Prime, because otherwise it's just sitting somewhere and making no money for anybody.
Right.
Yeah, Mike Flanagan started with Absentia, which was I think like a $40,000 movie, and that got him. I think Phase 4 picked that up, and that got him the next movie, which I forgetting what his next movie after Absentia was. But his career skyrocketed. I mean, compared to Absentia came out around the same time as The Collapse did, because they both hit my movie The Collapse did. Mine was out by Anchor Bay. His was out by Phase 4. But I remember like around the same time mine was releasing, his was releasing, and his career went whoa. But more power to him. He's a hell of a fucking talented director. So, you know. Oh yeah, Oculus. That was it. Oculus was the one he did after Absentia. I was at the TIFF Midnight Madness premiere for that. Portal pitch video. Maybe. Entirely possible. There are so many stories of proofs of concept working and getting people their their big break, into Hollywood and stuff like that.
I think Daryl's right on that one. I think it was is it
Ken Trattenberg?
I know I saw a Portal pitch video that was super, super well received. Like it was like the CGI was really well done, and it was really kind of really impressive. And I remember reading an article that a director had just gotten, given license to make a film, and it was pretty sizable budget too, just based on that.
But
that small short.
What Dan Trattenberg movie got made from that though? Because I know he wasn't like a nobody filmmaker. He's from like Angel and Buffy, right? Like he was one of the producers and writers on that. So
I didn't know I didn't know it was Trattenberg. I just knew that I had seen that Portal short.
What fucking movie is that? That's Vibrations, right? He's got like a robot arms and stuff that he plays music with and stuff like. That movie's wild. There's if you could think of an idea, it's probably been done in some weird way, and everyone's just forgotten the movie existed. Something like that. I haven't seen Absentia in years, and I remember liking it a lot, but I don't remember a lot about it. So I should probably revisit that at some point.
I'm curious, just as a general question, like how does it feel? Like now we're at 2015 in the chronology of the film. We're about 42 minutes in.
Yep.
How does it feel like watching this now? Do you look back and go, I was such an idiot back then. I'm so much smarter now. Like, how do you feel about yourself watching it?
I don't really watch the film that much now that it's done. even though it's over here on this screen, it's not like I'm like absorbed into. And I'm like that with all my past work to some degree. It's cool during a festival, like you're actually doing a festival tour, to sit in an audience with like people from different parts of the world to see how they react to different things differently. That part's cool. But I think after enough time you're watching your own work, you start to just see flaws and the things you could do differently. In general, it ends up being a thing where, you got to abandon a film. You can't actually finish a movie because it would never get done because it always happened. 2 months later, you go, oh, I could have done that, And so as more time passes, I'm happy with the work. But if I'm sitting and watching it, it's like, oh, okay, shit, I could have trimmed that there. I could have done something different there. Because I think anybody worth their salt is constantly trying to improve and self-analyze and reanalyze and, figure out a way to just do something better the next time and keep doing better and keep improving. So I have trouble watching this stuff now that it's done. And also because it's been the world premiere of this was June 2020. So it's played a shit ton of virtual festivals since then. And we've done streaming screenings and it's been a weird year with COVID, right? Because I couldn't actually physically go to any festivals. It was all streaming premieres. Or broadcast premieres or stuff like that. So I'm done watching this at this point. It's played enough and I've seen it enough. So yeah, it's probably different for other people. And someone like Kevin, who spent so much time going over raw footage and editing. I couldn't even imagine what it's like for him to watch after.
I'll never watch it again.
Okay, good.
I'm kidding. No, I'm proud of where it ended up, and it was a journey for sure, man. But
you talking about Band of the Hand, Mike Merriman, the karate rock and roll band taking on a drug cartel? Anyway, sorry. Go ahead, Kevin.
Oh, that's okay. Now I'm looking at the chat too, and I saw Mike mention Nothing But Trouble.
Oh yeah, that's.
I loved that movie.
I loved his strong, but it's so weird.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's pretty fucking strange, that movie. His prosthetic nose is literally a penis hanging off of his face.
That's what I loved about it. It's brilliant. Not just that, but it's just so off the wall. Up to that shit.
Yeah. But
Hey, is this the sequence where I have it on mute? But is this the sequence where you're on the?
I'm on a canal boat in Amsterdam.
Right.
Just smoked a big joint.
Right.
Yeah. Because I just had a bunch of meetings in Brussels, and then I took 2 day trips on this trip. I let because within an hour of a train ride, maybe an hour and a half, I went to Bruges because I'd seen In Bruges the movie, and I really loved the architecture in the movie, and I was like, oh, I got to see this place. And yes, there is a swan there. They actually have a statue of a swan, so that reference in the movie I think is literally a Bruges thing. So I spent a day in Bruges, and that was there was a Salvador Dali museum, and I had a really great day there. And I just wandered. I picked a direction, and I just walked until it wasn't a tourist area anymore, and found a little restaurant and stuff. And then the next day, I went to Amsterdam for the day, and just and this was before anything was legalized in Canada, because it was 2015. So it was like a preview of what's to come for Canada. Just walking into a dispensary or a coffee shop and being able to just buy and sit with German tourists and people all over the place who are just sort of there to do the same thing. And then ride boats.
That's rad, man.
Yeah.
Yes, Mike.
Oh yeah, Mickey's amazing. Absolutely. Yeah. I've got quite an extensive Mickey collection. I don't have them all because he's directed like 100 movies, but I've got a good number of them. And maybe we'll move on from that one.
I just love the variety of filmmakers that you included, because it's like filmmakers at all levels, right? It's not just directors, it's producers, it's people who work in finance, and just, yes, there's some, okay, the chat is, here you go. But, oh man. And then the other thing is that I really love, because I almost never seen this in any documentary about film. You show film market. And a film market, to me, my experience of the film market, I've been to AFM, of course, you've been to AFM.
Yeah.
Sure. I've been to the Cannes film market, and it's sort of like, as someone who loves, like, I love movies, like I love cheeseburgers. Like I love a really good, delicious cheeseburger, but I don't want to go to the plant where they carve up the cows and grind them into beef.
Yeah, you don't want to know how the sausage is made.
I don't want to know how the sausage is made. And when you go to a film market, it's like, this is how the sausage is made. This is how movies actually get financed, get sold. And the weird thing is how just movies are just devolved down to product. And you walk into some of those suites, and they have the, they've got the glossy folder, and here's all of our product, right? And it's just like, I got this. I got movies with naked girls. I got horror. I got this. I got slasher. It's like going to a used car lot, and it's this sinking feeling as someone who just loves film, which I assume everyone in the chat and everyone on this watch party, like, you just love passionately film. So going to a film market is the most depressing, sad. That was at least my personal experience. I don't know how you felt.
It can be, because a lot of those used cars never leave the lot too.
Yeah.
So
right.
Yeah, there's a lot of movies, like, you'll just see the same poster year after year after year, and it's often like Michael Madsen in something. Well, actually, Michael Madsen movies sell pretty well to a lot of territories, but that's a bad example. For some reason, he for a period of time, he was big money to Germany and places like that. I don't know if he still is, but you'll see the same poster, but it's been rebranded, or it's a new attempt to sell this animated movie that's probably like, some animation student from Indonesia has thrown together like a walk cycle of Santa Claus dancing on a background, and then that gets sold to like a content farm in the United States and branded as like Christmas adventure, but really it's like, what the worst spoof animation you could possibly think of does not equate to what I've authored DVDs for these movies, right? But they still end up in red boxes and stuff like that to trick parents into, you like Ratatouille, well, you're gonna love Ratatouille. It's right. That kind of thing. Yeah, there's a lot of that. Yeah, Eric Roberts is also definitely another.
Eric Roberts, or my favorite was Joe Estevez.
Oh yeah,
it was like a big. If you go to the film market, you'll see like, how many movies is Joe Estevez in, or Bill Murray's brother? You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, Bill Murray's. If you're talking about Charlie, Brian Murray, he's a good actor.
Right.
I mean, like he's a Brian. It's not Brian Doyle, and I think it's Brian Murray. It could be
Right.
Brian Doyle Murray.
It's not Brian. That's a different guy. The guy from God Bless America, the Bobcat at Goldthwait.
Oh,
that's Bill Murray's brother.
Right.
I'm just trying to think of his name, his actual. I think it's Brian. I could be wrong.
Anyway, I think he's the third. Brian Doyle Murray is Bill Murray's brother, and I think the other guy is Joel Murray.
That's it, Joel. But it's also things like there was a few-year period where a lookalike of Charles Bronson was in like a series of movies that were like modern-day Charles Bronson movies, but he was just the guy who looked like Charles Bronson, and that would actually sell internationally pretty well. Yeah. And
I mean, on the subject of film markets, though, and this is
Michael Ironside rules. Sorry, go ahead.
My personal opinion, and this is not meant to derail anything, but they're also pretty, and Justin might disagree with me, but I also find that they can be pretty performative too, and exhausting, because like you have to be on all the time, all day. You have to be on. You've got to be in like your sales pitch mode, and even the people that you're talking with, sometimes you might go out for drinks with them after, and like they'll like be really fun and great to hang out with. But across from that table, sometimes there's like just a performative nature about, like nobody wants to let you down if what they're looking for is not what you're selling. And at the same time, you're just trying to sell. So there's this weird sometimes back and forth in this tension of, well, is this all bullshit? Or is this like, are we just kind of going through the ringer with this meeting until somebody hits the bell and you move on to is that Frontiers anyway, until you move to the next level. But it is a great experience because you do learn to kind of filter through that, and it's all part of the career, right? Like
and that's Frontiers. That's a curated market where the project scope is really limited. So when you're taking a meeting with someone, they already have an idea of what the project is and stuff like that. But a market more like Cannes or Berlin or AFM, if you get the meeting or if you walk into the office, they generally don't have they often haven't had a chance to look at what the actual materials are ahead of the meeting, or if you're cold calling, just walking into offices, hey, I'm such and such, can I put a meeting on the book with somebody? You've got no time to research what the meeting's about, and that you're like meeting 10 out of 50 for the day. So it becomes a much more difficult position to pitch in a much more broad market, because these companies are there to sell finished product. They're not necessarily there to take pitches. The pitches don't necessarily happen during the business hours of the market in their actual market suites. They do. You can set up pitches, people will hear you out, but what they're really there at those markets to do is to sell finished product or prepackaged product that they've already sort of put feelers out to the buyers on and sent out emailers and stuff and said, this is what we've got coming up, please come see us. So it becomes difficult the first couple times you go, especially, to get a feel for how do I approach these people without it looking like I'm just this green asshole who's just like knocking on the door like, oh, can I please have a movie? Like it becomes more difficult than that. I gotta
never be good at that part of the job. That's
well,
why
the other thing that's kind of fun is, having been to the film markets, I will always walk out with a binder, like just like a big folder filled with posters, those little slicks, the sales slicks, just because these are movies, most of them will never see the light of day. You'll never find them. Yep. But what's funny is the classic poster poses that get ripped off, like, the poster from Spy Who Loved Me, where it's the back side of the girl. There are like 1,000 movies that have used that image.
That variation.
Oh, yeah. Dude. Let's not get into posters. That's a whole other.
Yeah, that's a whole other. You wouldn't know anything about that.
So JD Smith's got a really good question. What you're talking about there is called a minimum guarantee, or an MG, which is basically a contract that you would get for an unfinished film, contingent on the film being finished, or a negative pickup. There's two sort of levels to it, which basically means when the film gets delivered, we'll definitely pay you. And that stuff does happen, but it's not very often that an independent filmmaker on their own, without a sales company attached to their project, is able to go to one of these markets and get an MG for their material. It can happen, But oftentimes the buyer, whoever it is buying it, wants the security of having a sales company that they reliably had deliver films to them before, so that they know that the sales company has confidence in the picture as well, and that the sales company believes the movie's actually going to get made before they put the paper down, the contract, which is not technically money. It's a contract that you can then go and borrow money from. Like if it's a legitimate distributor with a track record, a lot of their MGs, their pre-buys, are bankable. You can bring it to a bank and go, okay, well, I've got a contract for $500,000. I've got to make the movie. You've given people finance for these contracts before. You trust this company, so I'm able to borrow against that. Or you can go to a private lender or a gap financer, or there's lots of companies that just specialize in loaning you tax credits or money from the tax rebates and money against papered contracts. It's not, as like an up and coming independent filmmaker, it's not particularly common. It happens, but it's difficult to make it happen, where an independent filmmaker can go to one of these markets, walk into a company's office, have a great meeting, and then the company signs an actual MG on the spot. It's not super common. Oftentimes those meetings are the first contact, and then it's about them tracking you over a period of time after that. Well, you get your sort of ducks in a row, and then maybe bring on a sales company that believes in the project and that company trusts, and then that's another partner in the puzzle that puts together the money. Because the problem with a lot of MGs is, like, they need to know the movie's going to get made. So if they put down $100,000 against a territory, let's say, and the movie costs $1 million, that's 10% of the budget. They don't know where the other 90% of the budget is, and they don't want to give out MGs for movies that may not happen because they're only 10%. It's complicated, but it does happen. It's like a shoot the moon kind of moment, right? It's always better. It's often better, at least, to have a trusted sales company on board to help you formulate that pitch and go to their contacts that they've already established, that there's already trust back and forth between them. That's usually a better strategy. That's a good joke. I did notice some questions we kind of skipped past. One of them was from Kyle. He said, did we check out any festivals digitally I wouldn't have otherwise gone to myself? I did. I did check out. I think I watched some stuff at Imaginative, for sure, because nationally available festivals or international, like Slam Dance this year was like $10 for the entire festival, and it was worldwide available. So
it's great.
I've never been to Slam Dance before. It was cool to be able to watch some of those films digitally. It definitely opened up the world for a lot of people. I think the challenge, though, is, like, once Sundance goes nationally available to everybody, that kind of burns a lot of regional festivals who rely on premiere status to be able to, get films to play for their area, because it's now played nationally across the country. So it's a weird little gray area where it's super cool the entire country has access to a festival. But if it's the entire country, that's more of a release than a festival. It's not, you can limit the number of tickets you sell, but
it's like a streaming service you subscribe to for a short period of time. Like I actually believe that the digital film festival model is just an extension. I think that a lot of festivals, when things return to normal later this year, definitely in 2022, these festivals will return to in-person screenings, but I think they'll add a digital adjunct because there's too much money in it. Think of the tens of thousands of people who can't get to Sundance, who've heard about it, saying, I'm just gonna subscribe for $50 for 2 weeks and I can watch a bunch of the movies. I actually think that that's going to happen. There's an exclusivity element to it, and a lot of these movies, unfortunately, a lot of movies that go to Sundance do not get distribution, not any kind of major distribution.
There's truth to that. I do think that it's not as much money. Maybe for Sundance it is, but a lot of the festivals that I talk to internally, because there's actually a high cost to actually hosting these things on streaming platforms, and you got to pay for bandwidth, you got to pay for a bunch of stuff, and the actual ticket cost isn't really that high. They didn't get the number of viewers they expected because it's not quite as special virtually as it is to actually physically. The community aspect of the festival isn't there. Right. So you don't necessarily have as much viewership with a lot, at least over the last year. Things might shift, but there wasn't quite as much viewership at these digital festivals as they had hoped in a lot of cases. So I think it's the groundwork is there for it to be an additional revenue stream that actually pays off. But for a lot of festivals, it didn't really necessarily pay off. From the ones I've talked to, I mean, this is anecdotal, right? But I do think there's like, it works for a great big festival, but maybe some of the regional stuff who try it, they're getting way less ticket sales than they would if they actually brought out 200 people to a theater. So right. It's kind of tough. Eggers, by the way, Mike Eggers. I like them all though, but Eggers for sure.
I'm gonna say I have to say Astor.
Yeah, Astor's they're and Peel too. I mean, they're all making very interesting horror stuff. I love The Lighthouse. I love that movie so much. It was so ridiculously fun.
Every time, like, very few things scare me anymore. Like, very few things like creep me out and like really make me feel like a chill. Mm-hmm. But Astor movies, I swear to God, I'm like, I can only watch them once and then I'm out. I'm like, I just can't do this again because my stomach can't take it.
Yeah, I would say Astor, but it's rough. But Eggers, I don't know, man. Lighthouse was just so.
Oh,
The Witch was good too.
Like, the Witch was incredible too.
Well, interesting.
And both of Peele's films too. I think they're all very different directors in so many ways. But like I mean, Peele obviously is, I think, going to ultimately always have more mainstream success because his films are like a little bit more easier to digest. You know what I mean?
Yep. The Mickey movie that Merch and I watched recently, according to his comment, that was Fudo: The Next Generation, I believe. Okay. I like the idea. Sorry,
I agree with Daryl. I like the digital extension, like especially because even when these festivals come back, I mean, it's like, what it's like when you go. And a lot of times, like, I think it works for a film market. AFM did a full digital thing. And I know a lot of small festivals that are saying, we're going to have this as an option, right?
Oh, yeah.
You still buy a ticket, but you have the option then to, in a window of time, you've got 2 weeks to, watch movies that you may have missed at the festival. Because that's always my regret is you go to a festival and you don't have time to see everything. With digital, it's sitting there. South by did it digital. They did a great job on it. And AFM this year was digital. And I went to the conference and it was, I like it as in addition to. Here's Tim League, of course, from Alamo Drafthouse in your documentary. I love Tim. He's such a great, he loves karaoke. I'm just not a fan of karaoke, but
really, I quite enjoy karaoke, but I think that comes from just being at a ton of film festivals, and it's just such a common type of party in the genre film festival scene that I it's almost like I need to have 3 or 4 staples to just vibe to some degree. But I do enjoy it. I really do enjoy doing karaoke.
I like the drinking that happens during the karaoke, but Alamo Drafthouse is coming back. They're all like opening up. I think the LA Drafthouse opens up at the end of May. Like they've got like a full schedule of when they're opening up. And I think it's going to be packed because of the ArcLight is gone.
Right.
The ArcLight cinemas, that chain is what, 300-400 screens. Like that's that being gone. The Drafthouse is going to have to make up for it. And the problem with the Drafthouse is, I think their biggest screening room in LA holds 66 seats. That's it. Because they're all like these. I mean,
they're big and spacious, and there's room to serve an entire meal in front of somebody and stuff like that. Yeah,
right. It's great, but it's like I do like that big experience. That's why the Dome was always my default. Like I'm going to see it in the Dome. So yes, and Chris Murch has thrown the gauntlet down. As the Lighthouse is.
I tend to agree with him there. I mean, I think I'm not. I don't know. I think it's just a better time at the movies, but I got to appreciate the care that went into the Witch. And they are all pretty great. I've only ever been to draft houses once, and that's when I went to a Fantastic Fest in 2015, and it was such a cool fucking experience. I remember they premiered Crimson Peak that year, and Del Toro was in the house, and they all gave us free beer for God knows what reason, and it was just it was pretty great. Fun time though. I really had a good time at the Draft House, and just the idea of like, oh, I can order a pizza in the middle of the screening. I'm into it. Let's do it. Like,
And they're very respectful.
yeah, they're not distracted. Well, they also, the way the theater's built is the server can kind of duck below the eye line, which is great.
And they do this thing, at least at the Draft House in LA when it opened. They don't bring you popcorn in like a disposable bucket. It comes in a giant metal bowl.
Mm-hmm.
It's a giant metal bowl of like freshly popped popcorn. It's
well, because they can clean the bowl and it cuts down on the waste. Although probably debatable because the water waste to clean the bowl is that the same as the paper waste to I don't know, whatever.
It's also you've been a fantastic fest, Justin.
Yeah,
it gets like if you spend the entire day there, you're so tired by the end of the day, and then all your meals you've eaten right in front of you, in front of the you've been drinking beer since like 11 o'clock in the afternoon. By the time the big midnight premiere plays, you're super excited, but you're also just like, oh my god.
Yeah, you're ready to pass out pretty much, or whatever party is that night. Or they're definitely fun festivals, for sure. So I think we're now getting into the cycle of Life Changer getting greenlit in the movie and finally going into production with it after like years of starts and stops and the financing falling apart and stuff like that. I think my desk there is as messy as my desk is right now. It's less messy.
That's the same. Wait a second. In the movie right now, that's where you're sitting. Right.
Yeah, it's the same. It's the same seat.
You still have DVDs.
I need to burn them because I author DVDs for various distributors. So,
that makes sense. Yeah,
like you're talking about blanks. Yeah, I have to.
Like blank discs. I forgot though that you did the authoring.
Yep. So that's a good question. How important is the foreign market now for indies? It's as important and more important than ever because the price for North American purchases is significantly lower than it was even 5 years ago. So every dollar counts and every territory counts because you need to be able to, one second, you need to be able to piece together your finance or your return on your movie from every platform you possibly can. And like China has their own streaming platforms and South Korea has their own streaming platforms and their distributors know how to sell that territory. So it may be on a lower budget movie, it might be piecemeal, right? You might get $5,000 out of Germany here, you might get $10,000 out of Japan, and it all sort of adds up to cover your budget over, there's 187 territories in the world or something like that. It's a pretty ridiculous number of possible territories you could sell to, and the average movie might sell to 10 to 30 of them, the average indie movie if they're lucky. So there was a point where it was almost split 50-50. The domestic return, what's coming in from the US and Canada, was about half of what what money would come back, and then every international territory would add up to half. And I think the international is now worth more than the domestic, but it really depends on the movie. And it really depends on the deals you get out of the United States, because if you're able to get an overall deal out of Shudder or out of Netflix or something like that, like as an original or something like that, that's going to be a lot of money, and they're going to buy a lot of territories outright for that particular streaming platform. But I do think the international territories are incredible. That's why you need a good sales agent. You can try to sell those territories yourself, but you're not going to have the luck that a sales agent who consistently goes to markets and has a Rolodex of possible buyers for every single territory, you're never going to be as plugged in as a really good sales agent is, who the people already trust because they've sold 10 other movies or 20 other movies to this particular company. So I think ignoring those territories would be a big mistake, and you're basically leaving a lot of money on the table. And it's also really cool when you put out a movie and Japan buys it. You don't realize the legacy your movie might have in that country because you're not there on the ground to see people appreciate it. So years later, I get people who email me from South Korea and stuff who are like, oh, I saw your movie that collapsed. And I mean, I don't even think that's a particularly good movie, but to this South Korean fan, they really, really like it. And it's something I didn't even know was out there, but it's been out there for 8 years, So I think there's something to be said for letting a film like have its own life and grow its own legs and try its life out in various. It was Laos and Vietnam when Skull World came out we were like the #1 documentary in Laos and Vietnam. We beat out a Katy Perry documentary. We beat out a Justin Bieber documentary that came out around the same time in those territories specifically for like 6 months. And so I have no idea the impact that particular documentary would have in that territory. But according to iTunes and according to the charts there, it's like, well, a lot of people watched it in that territory. And that can translate to overages and additional money out of those territories. So I think, yeah, you can't, discounting the value of foreign right now is a big mistake. I hope that answered your question. Like even post-COVID, like COVID, it's still, film is still sold very much the same way. Shut up. Yes, I definitely passed out at screenings. Once I get into a dark room and it's late at night and I'm watching a movie that isn't yelling at me all the time, sometimes I pass out. It's that, like, I don't know. It's a very comfortable place to be. I'll probably be, the anxiety of sitting into a theater after COVID is probably going to keep me awake from now going forward.
You haven't been, wait a sec, you haven't been in a theater?
No, I haven't been to a movie theater since March. The last movie I saw on the big screen, March 2020. The last movie I saw on the big screen was Psycho Goreman at the Cast and Crew screening. So that was literally the last thing I saw. But most people didn't see Psycho Goreman on the big screen, so I got that to say at least.
I saw it on VOD. But I did drive to a theater to see Tenet.
Yeah. I've known that it was an aerosol. I've realized that it was an aerosol virus since like March 2020, right. Because all the data out of South Korea was like, yeah, this is an airborne virus. It's aerosol. And there was no denying that. So I was like, well, why would I sit into an enclosed space with poor ventilation for a 2-hour period with spotty mask use at best? I wasn't big on catching COVID to go see a movie.
I saw Tenet too, but I saw it at a drive-in. That's the only time I've been to any kind of theater, I think, since COVID started. I'm the same. Like I had to go to Dallas for a shoot a little while back, and my PA was, after the shoot day was wrapped, my PA was like, "Hey, do you want to go grab something to eat?" I was like, "Yeah, I'd love to get some Texas barbecue." And he says, I know the place. He drives into this parking lot, and I had to say, "Look, man,
thanks, JD,
but I'm not going in there." Like, it was just packed. It was jam packed out the doors, and I'm just not ready for that yet, I think.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Jake. But no, I'm ready. I mean, I've been going to outdoor dining since it was available. So dining outdoors, I wear a mask like everywhere, obviously, where you're supposed to. But I drove to Vegas to see Tenet. Not worth it, because the movie was not great, but I saw the Godzilla versus Kong recently at the AMC near me at the Santa Mall, and I'm ready to go back. Well,
you're fully vaccinated now too, though, right?
I'm fully vaccinated, yeah. But even I just went to the drive-in is what I did.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's different. That's I would have done drive-ins if you know. I didn't have to rent a car to do that.
we did our award show at a drive-in. This thing, you should check it out. It's weird because like people are honking, so it's like it's like an award show in the middle of LA traffic. But it was a way we could do it, and I think people appreciated that we did it. The chat is on fire today. I will say that. So thank you. Yeah,
this is a great chat.
Oh, and Bill and Ted 3. Bill and Ted 3. I didn't see in the theater, but boy, I really love that movie. Bill and Ted.
Yeah, it was the right uplifting movie with the right uplifting story at the right time.
Which is why
it was also perfectly in line, like emotionally, with the previous two films. Like, there's nothing.
Great.
What more could you expect from a Bill and Ted movie? You know.
And the thing is this: it was so uplifting. It was so fun. It was so fulfilling. You felt happy after seeing it, which is why it got 0 Oscar nominations.
Right.
The feel bad movies are the ones that get
it's only movies that make you feel horrible. Those are the ones. I was just like recently, because I watched a buddy of mine's indie movie, The Legend of Hell's Gate, and it got me inspired to watch Dances with Wolves, which won a ton of Oscars that year. It's so uplifting, and Dances with Wolves, directed by Kevin Costner.
No, I know that, but I'm just wondering how you got from The Legend of Hell's Gate to Dances with Wolves.
They're both Westerns.
Oh, okay. All right. Got it. Okay.
Dance with Wolves is sort of a flip of the Western. It's a deeper analysis and deconstruction of westerns per se, and basically the basis for Avatar. And but in any case, that just inspired me to watch it and just depressed me that like this was the kind of movie that the Oscars used to acknowledge, and now it's just horribly depressing stuff only.
Yeah, but there's still some pretty good films there. Like wait, I can't even remember what the Best Picture nominees were this year. I didn't really think
that's how memorable they were.
Well, that doesn't mean they're bad films. I saw
it was an odd year for to remember the Oscars, but it was the Sound of Metal.
That was good, but also depressing. You're right.
The Father, which was depressing as
okay, I didn't see The Father.
Also good.
Judas and the Black Messiah was good. Trial of Chicago 7 was good. Okay, these were not uplifting.
No, they're all depressing.
So. Every one of them, this year.
Nomadland, which one?
No, definitely not uplifting.
And the irony of Nomadland, Frances McDormand accepting the award for that, playing a homeless woman when they moved homeless people out of Union Station. I mean, I travel through Union Station all the time, and I take the train and the metro. Mm-hmm. And so I just thought I was kind of horrified to see how they turned it into this Oscar space, and they kicked out all the people. Also, the inconvenience of people just trying to go to normal day jobs, not being able to go through Union Station is like shutting down the freeway to put on an award show. I was just like really, really down on the Oscars.
Did you see the?
I mean, how else are we going to pat celebrities on the back?
Right.
Did you see the farm to table payola boxes that Amazon sent out for No Man Land to critics? Like a wooden crate of like farm fresh vegetables, like the kind of stuff that the people in the movie would kill to have to eat was sent out, like to critics. It's like, here's a whole giant box of freshly picked vegetables and stuff like that. Jenny, that is a good point, though. The virtual festivals absolutely open up accessibility to people, and oftentimes they insist on providing even closed captions and stuff like that, which you don't get necessarily in an in-person film festival. So absolutely, it helps with that side of things. And I do hope that a degree of virtual festivals get continued onward. It's more just. A really good example is this with Clapboard Jungle. With this movie, Arrow Video's got it in a lot of territories, but in the United States, Gravitas Ventures has it. And we were not allowed to play a single U.S. festival virtually because they were worried that their platforms, the TVOD platforms, Comcast, Time Warner, all this sort of stuff, get cold feet if something has already been available virtually nationally across the United States. So they didn't want to burn that possible audience with any U.S. virtual festivals ahead of that. So we had to say no to every single one of them that accepted us, which was a real bummer for me because we got into some really cool festivals. But it was like, we can't do this because we got to go out on all these platforms and actually make money. So sorry, we can't do this. And a lot of films have to hold back their virtual for that particular reason because the distributor may have another plan, or there's a very narrow window and a niche window to make money on an independent film. And if you burn that on an audience, but it's not actually an audience paying revenue to you as a filmmaker or you as a distributor or you as a producer or whatever, then you've lost revenue that you might need to actually recoup the money you spent in the movie. So it is a little complicated like that. But in other territories, I played, we played tons of digital festivals with this. Like this is the weird thing about this is I got into Fantasia, Fright Fest, Sitges, and a pile of other fests. And Sitges is a movie. It is a festival in Spain that I've wanted to go to for so long, and I was just waiting. I was like, I can't wait to get a movie into Sitges. And then when I finally got a movie into Sitges, I wasn't able to physically go to Spain because of the pandemic. So it was like,
that's
it is what it is. What can you say, really? It's been a very weird year for a lot of different reasons, and a very tragic year. So, I'm not complaining. I actually think this documentary is done as well as it has because the market is not as oversaturated because there's less products being sold into the market. So there's a hole that needed to be filled, and it certainly helped this film.
I agree. I think it's that, and that it's so well edited.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I don't know why that is. I hired this dude to do it, and or to edit it with me, and yep, that's exactly. That's exactly what happened. So Kevin, you also work in I don't know, how would I phrase your job?
Well, I'm freelance mostly right now, but I do a lot of work in esports
right
these days. Chris Burchard, right? Both of them.
So is it more broadcast design, or like are you actually like directing spots? Like how does the world of, because this is a good topic, I think. It's very tough to make money as an independent filmmaker when all you're doing is making films, and if you just rely on the income from the films you make, it's hard to stay afloat. So like I run a post-production company where I do trailers and DVD and Blu-ray authoring and closed captioning and final deliverables like that people will actually provide to the platforms and stuff. I make all that stuff. That's how I mostly keep afloat that way. I make revenue from my films, but it's not enough to like survive off of. And you do something kind of similar. So, but you also have, I know I've read scripts of yours, you have aspirations of directing narrative film, and you made a feature documentary. So your day job is still related to the film industry in some way. So can you talk a little bit about how you like when you choose to do that, especially with post-production, how like is there artistic fulfillment in dealing with clients and client work and just like the grind of that?
Sometimes there is, and sometimes there's very much not. So, and I do direct, I do direct ads and stuff like that for, in and out of esports. Like I wrote, directed, and even did voiceover for an ad for Kentucky Fried Chicken this year. They released a KFC console, which they're actually releasing, which is crazy.
I remember
like
that.
Wait, what?
Yeah, it's like a chicken fryer.
It's got a chicken warmer in it. Is it a fryer or a warmer?
Or I think it's a warmer. I think you're right. It's got like a chicken warming tray, but it's like a console that's more powerful than Xbox. Like it's crazy. But they did this big thing, and they kind of hired an agency I work for to make it. And I got an opportunity to work on that, and it's great. And I get to travel a lot and shoot a bunch of stuff. It's not as personally fulfilling as it would be to make films. I'll be perfectly honest about that. But, and this is why, and I think, thanks for bringing this up, Justin, because I actually think this is a really good conversation, especially in the context of this documentary and like the resolve it actually takes to push yourself and keep on and like and be an independent filmmaker. I would love to be able to do that. Like I would love to just say, I'm just going to tell these stories and I'm going to grind it out and I'm going to do it and I'm going to do it like no matter what. But the reality is, whether it's a matter of me not having the resolve, and I hope that's not the case. I do have a lot of stuff that I'd love to make in the future, or whether it's the other work that I'm doing to kind of pay the bills and pay my mortgage and everything else that are taking up so much time that I don't really have the time to write out the ideas and stuff that I want to see executed into a feature. I don't know, but I do like, I would love to do what you're doing and be able to like push myself and say, no, you know what? I'm going to make this short. I'm going to make a feature. I'm going to push myself no matter what it takes to see it get done. I've done it once before and it exhausted the hell out of me. And I think, I don't want to say that I gave up, but now I think I'm at a point where I've kind of said, you know what? I still get to work behind the camera. I still get to edit. I still get to make like I do a lot of humorous stuff. So I still get to time a joke every once in a while and edit. And that makes me comfortable, but I am still envious that I'm like, dude, I would love to, I've told you about it. I had a script for like an esports team that gets attacked by werewolves that I wanted to do and like all kinds of cool shit, but it's just not the reality is I don't know that I have the time or the.
Well, I guess on that question so there's a power to the word no, and I don't mean you turn down client work because I don't really turn down client work necessarily, but is there a way you can schedule a block of time, even if it's 4 hours a week or like a block of time every week where you say, this is just me and just my creative time. And no matter what, I'm going to do something in that creative time for me, just me. And nobody gets to schedule anything in that time. You get to make no other plans in that time. That block is yours. And for a while, that block there might be a period of time of adjustment where it's like you're just twiddling your thumbs and you've got you're blocked a bit during that block. But I think eventually if you give yourself some kind of a regimented schedule of a block of time where you're just working on anything for yourself, writing and whatever else, I think you might find the time in your week. Because a lot of what I end up doing is like I'll do a bunch of client work throughout the week. But if I know I want to write something, or like last year I wrote an entire album of just like I bought some keyboards and I restrung my guitar and I wrote a whole fucking album in my spare time. And part of that was just me going, okay, well, this block is my time. It's not my client's time. It's my fucking time. And I would schedule that throughout my week. And it's like, it was just a thing, a way to regiment, to force myself to put as much thought into my own drive and my own work as I do in my clients' stuff, so that my clients don't dominate my entire life, essentially.
And that's the kind of resolve that I'd love to be able to find in terms of like, blocking out that time. And I think even like you'll agree, like even though we're on different paths, like you'll agree that time is hard to block out no matter what.
Oh, it is.
Even when I do have that time, it's like, you know what? I'd love to go and spend time with my fiance and with the dog and like go, like just take it easy. Or sometimes like I got to go fix light bulbs around the house. And I might even find time to do that. But hey, man, one day I'm gonna make another movie one day. Mm-hmm. And it's no small, like it's not me blowing smoke up your ass saying that. Like working on this film really very much inspired me to kind of say, you know what? No, I still want to push myself to do this, and I do want to find the time to do it. And I want to continue the pursuit of being a filmmaker. So I very much thank you for that.
I definitely think you should. I mean, it's not fucking easy, and I don't even think I'm really anywhere yet, even though. My stuff is getting seen and it's out there. There's a lot more ladder to climb, but I do think that like, as much as there's power in you saying no to others, the first no is yourself too. It's like, I don't know. It's hard to resolve because it's like everybody's situation is different. But I always feel like if you ever feel trapped by the cycle of just constant client work and life and everything standing in the way of whatever creative thing you want to do, there's got to be a way to just schedule in, okay, well, if all this other stuff is important, then I got to make this block of time important too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't know. I'm just spitballing. How you doing, Chris?
I feel like I dropped in on a therapy session here.
Sorry that derailed. It was that's like I think that's very much the reality of filmmaking, and I really think that this film speaks to that. Like it takes a lot to do this, like to do what Justin has done and make the films that he's done. Like this isn't just like this movie is not like, and I can tell you, yeah, I co-edited this film with Justin. I worked on it. But I can tell you from personal experience, from having made even just one feature film, like this, it's a grind, man. It's a grind. And after your first film, it's like you really, really are going to question, do I want to continue this pursuit? Do I have it in me? Or do I want to kind of take my knowledge and the things that I know and kind of move it in another direction? And that's not only part of what drew me to this, but I think part of the reason why Justin and I are friends, really, like not just based on this film and other interests that we have in common, but like this is like, you make a movie, you've been through it, you've been through the grinder, and you're either going to choose to kind of go another way, or you're going to choose to bust your ass and keep busting your ass and notch it up and notch it up and notch it up until hustle for a chance to make something great.
Yeah, that's the goal, right? Is to just make something that is undeniably good.
Yeah.
You know, you hope. I mean, everybody's gonna. There's always going to be somebody who doesn't like the stuff you do, but I think that should be the goal of any artist, is to just, you know, do the best thing you can do, make the best thing you can, and hope that enough people agree that it's also good. Like, they also agree that it's good. Aw, buddies. Thanks, Merch.
Kevin, you're talking like you haven't done. I mean, like, you made the great documentary about movie posters. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, man. Like, I appreciate that. And I appreciate that, and I'm proud of that film. But like, the reality is, like, you've got to. It's not. You gotta keep pushing it and keep moving forward and keep like on doing it. And that energy is hard to sustain, and that's why that's again a big part of what drew me to working on this film. Is I've watched Justin sustain that energy and just be like, nope, on to the next one, on to the next one, on to the next one.
For better or worse.
Continually, yeah, but you know, for better or for worse, like that's how you step up in this career. And even beyond, you know, beyond just making it and seeing your film and having it finished and having it be you know, a fulfillment of what you set out to create, that notch forward of being able to look back. Like, I always had the idea that one day I would look back on my first film, and although I was proud of it, be able to say confidently, that's the worst thing I've ever made, and I'm all the better for it, because it taught me all of these things that led up to this, you know? And I think that's a big part of moving forward in this.
Yeah, you have to learn by doing in this business in a lot of ways. And it's one thing to sit and like armchair, just like, oh, I can make this better, I can do better, I would do so much better. But then the practicalities of actually getting something made, you know, getting it through uncompromised, you know, actually getting it shot, dealing with the notes from the various investors and producers, and getting it out to a public that is indifferent to it to begin with, and then once they start seeing it, are either going to like it or hate it. It's a Sisyphusian task. You know, you're rolling that ball up, you're rolling that boulder up the hill, and it might just roll right back down and crush you. And I do think that like there's something to be said for actually attempting to do that, and not just saying, oh, I can do it better, without actually trying to do it. I think it's very much the way you survive in this business, or the way you push forward, is just by taking your hits and just getting. It's the Rocky metaphor, you know. You take or is that a quote from Rocky, or is that a quote from something? Anyway, the idea that you just get back up and you push forward again, and you try and get the next thing going, or you know, if that one didn't work, well, what did I do wrong, or why didn't that work? You know, try and figure that out, so that for the next one you're able to find a clearer path to some degree of success. And you know, then you find out, okay, what were the things holding that one back? Okay, well, the next one will be, you know, this, and hopefully, even though nobody knows anything, the William Goldman quote is really true, and there's no way to predict what a hit's going to be. The only way you're going to get to that point is if you actually put in the work. That's the tough. That's the one, the Rocky VI speech. Thanks, Steve.
And to that point, Justin, nobody ever talks about how. And this is, and like, you can't blame reviewers and stuff like that for never kind of discussing this thing. But when you're making an indie film, the constraints of not having enough money, or not having to, like, those are very much a part of the process. But they're always considerations in production, always. But they'll never be considerations in reviews or in the final project, right? It's never like, oh, they really, really did a great job with what they had.
Well, you sometimes get that with criticism.
Every once in a while.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I can't blame critics for that. Like, they're only there to kind of judge the final product. So any of you who want to get into film, realize that I think one of your biggest strengths is going to be your resourcefulness to do the most with having the least. Like,
Yeah.
what can you build out of sticks and stones? And if you can't have the big effects and you have to get creative, like, you really, really have to lean into that creativity to make something happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're almost done the movie now. Actually, we're 30 minutes away from the end, so that's good. We've sustained. Oh, my dog! I miss my dog. He's with my parents right now, living in a much nicer, safer area for a little while. Keep me from having to walk him 3 times a day in and out of a massive tower building and exposing myself 21 times a week. Additionally, beyond when I would have to just to get supplies. Because Toronto is a mess at the moment with the COVID. Anyway, on that happy note,
I do love the way that the film ends, though.
Mhm.
I do really love that it just kind of wraps up with
what Lloyd Kaufman.
Well, yeah, and also you getting like the grander editing too, or not editing, the grander ending too, right? Where you get up on stage at the festival with is it Peter?
Yeah, that would have been at Toronto After Dark in 2018.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's we were talking about Rocky, and that's kind of the way the film is structured to a degree of like, an underdog getting beat up and then getting some relative level of success, and I say relative with a real asterisk because, Life Changer did pretty well, and it was number 1 on Netflix for a couple of days, and, it sold to it's on Showtime right now, and it sold to a bunch of territories, and, it did decently well, but it's still a really low budget movie. And in the scope of all the movies that get released in a year, it's not like it was this massive friggin' hit or anything. So, but to me as a creative and it is a success in terms of my goals and the what I wanted to do with it and getting me to that next level. And I think that does give the film a certain degree of a happy ending, which is something I couldn't have predicted when I started shooting this movie because I didn't know where life was going to go. In fact, Life Changer wasn't even a seed of an idea in my mind when I started shooting Clapboard Jungle. I was trying to get other movies made entirely. So I think it works. I believe this film works on that sort of level of just like tracking the whole goal of it, tracking from the seed of an idea all the way to release and exploitation, and then now what kind of thing. And then we got this finished right when COVID hit. So it's a whole new business on that front now too. And I'm very curious to see where things are going to go. Like, I still don't necessarily have a clear picture of what the film business is going to look like going forward, but we got to figure it out because it's very much a sink or swim kind of situation.
Well, I actually firmly believe that it will be a new golden age for indies because I think Hollywood is going through a dramatic change, especially with movie theater chains, going out of business. And there's no guarantee, even though that movie theaters are open, there's no guarantee that there's enough of the higher end Hollywood blockbusters to keep them open. And I think that people also have spent the last year indoors, and like after a while, like I think indie films are now like more in the diet of audiences because they haven't had to been fed whatever Hollywood has coming down the pike. So I'm very optimistic. It just ended. I do love all the stuff through the credits that you have, like Lloyd Kaufman among others, like in the credits. What are your final thoughts? I think optimism is a great place to end, which is kind of how.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to realize and take stock that as many obstacles that can get thrown in your way trying to do this as a career, you've got to take all your wins as what they are and really appreciate those moments as they happen and really take stock of the victories you have, because that path is going to shape sort of your block of memories going forward. And you celebrate your wins and you learn from your losses, and I think that gives you a very good sort of guiding light to move forward in the business. It's not always going to be gravy, and it's not always going to be good times and up times, and there's going to be challenges galore thrown at you, and stuff you can't even necessarily predict is gonna happen that throws a big monkey wrench into the plan. Maybe you'll get really lucky and none of that'll happen to you, and you'll explode overnight and you'll be some giant success, and more power to you. But I think you have to be really prepared to take stock of where you're at each point in your life, and appreciate the good times while they're there, and really just give yourself the leeway to make mistakes, because that's the only way you're going to learn.
It's amazing. I do think that I think it's important actually to this sounds crazy, lower your expectations.
Yeah.
And I mean that in a good way, and then also just appreciate the journey. Like if you just appreciate it, I think, just having always had, I mean, I've had like day jobs before, like when I worked at G4, that was kind of a day job, but I've always, I've never not had a passion project. I don't know what I would do without a passion project. You have to have one. Like, and for me, it's a film I'm trying to make. I'm finishing 2 documentaries right now. One is much further along. Like there's other projects. I can't not have a project that I want to be working on. Justin, I know you're that way. And Kevin, yourself, it's like having that, even if it's like, okay, this is going to take a long time, I know, but it's like that sense of purpose. And that just, I don't know, that just keeps me going. So, and your film just so well illustrates that part of the process. Kevin, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I kind of agree with what Justin said. Like, it's perseverance, right? And I really hope that the film illustrates that, yeah, it's hard, but there's something at the end of that journey if you push yourself through to make it happen. And I mean, my job was just to take what Justin had done and try and, with his help, structure it into like a narrative that tells that story. But I always felt throughout that like that grit and those hard moments are just as important to show as any victory for any aspiring filmmaker who wants to watch this, because you got to understand, like, you're going to get hit, you got to get back up, and you got to do it and do it and do it and just keep moving forward.
Yeah,
to make it. And it's a really I don't know. I think Justin's story is fascinating all the way through this and his whole career up until Life Changer and what he's going to do next. So I hope that anybody watching this film is really able to kind of learn something from it, and even not just practically, but almost emotionally. Like, learn how to deal with the way that those punches are going to roll at you, and you'll be all the better for it.
Yep. And keep in mind, like, for every overnight success you see, you're seeing the tip of an iceberg, and there's all the stuff below the water, all the foundation they laid and all the work they did to get there. So don't feel this sense of grass is greener or jealousy when it's like, oh, how did that joker get that crazy project? How come that's not me? Well, you didn't see the work they did to get to that point, to get in the right room, to pitch to the right people, to show writing samples that properly sold their, there's always way more to the story than what you read in the trades. So just deal with your own reality and your own shit, and like focus and move forward. And obviously there's systemic problems that hold people back in the business, and depending on where you're coming from and your perspective and your upbringing and your what you have, the opportunities you have available to you, everybody's coming at things from a different place. But I do think if you're focused on moving forward and you're doing the work, that you're already further along than a lot of people who pretend that they're doing the work, but say they're a filmmaker. Like, it's always important to just buckle down and, okay, what can I do today to help? What can I do tomorrow? And
with that, and a final comment from our chat. I want to thank you, Justin and Kevin, for joining the audience here and presenting Clapboard Jungle, along with some really amazing commentary. I want to thank everyone also in our chat who commented.
Daryl, thank you.
I even want to thank Mike Merriman, who's a smartass.
Well, he hasn't been here for a while.
He hasn't been here for a while. He's probably out getting weed. But I will just say, thank you so much for doing this. I think it's
that's gonna pop up.
I just want to call more attention to your film. We should do one with Kevin with his movie. That way,
I'd love to, man.
That would be fun. So the podcast it's in our queue. It's coming out. Also, I want to thank our audience in particular for sticking with us, watching the whole thing. And next week we have another watch party. They're Fridays at 5 p.m. We're going to be doing a comedy called Call Me Brother. And the cast will be there and the filmmakers. That one's going to be a lot of fun. It's a comedy. It's a comedy about incest. So with that, check out the trailer for Call Me Brother. Be back next week. It's a hilarious film. Clapboard Jungle. Make sure you see it, whether it's on the Arrow Player, video on demand, iTunes, however you see Clapboard Jungle. And Kevin's documentary, 24 by 36. Check out his doc as well for an upcoming watch party. So we'll talk offline about that.
Cool.
And I don't, I just want to say thank you to everybody and take care. It's been a blast hanging with you and everyone in the chat. Check out some of our other watch parties. We do them every week. We've been doing them every week since last year. So I appreciate it. I think we have a final comment. Have a great night, everyone. Hey.
Oh, you skipped all the Hunky Boys comments, I see. Have a good night, everybody. Thanks so much for watching and tuning in and asking good questions. And I'm going to stop rambling now. Good night,
everyone. Good night.